The following was recorded on June 20th and includes Jan Mickelson of WHO News Radio 1040 in Des Moines interviewing Ron Paul 2008 Chairman Kent Snyder on Ron Paul being excluded from the June 30th Presidential Candidates Forum sponsored by Iowans for Tax Relief and the Iowa Christian Alliance. Ed Failor of Iowans for Tax Relief was contacted by Mickelson and joined the conversation to explain why his group decided to keep Ron Paul out. You decide if Mr. Failor's excuse for excluding Ron Paul is believable or not.
Views expressed are those of the host, guests, and callers, not necessarily those of News Radio 1040 WHO.
Jan Mickelson here with you. It is your turn, and what we're going to do here is have a lot of open line time. Before we do anything else, we're going to go on our newsmaker line and speak briefly with Kent Snyder. Kent, you are what, from whom, and where?
I'm the chairman of the Ron Paul 2008 presidential campaign office here in Arlington, Virginia.
Ah, all right. Now, I understand that there is a presidential candidates forum that the Iowans for Tax Relief and the Iowa Christian Alliance are putting together. They've invited Republican candidates to appear. All the Republican candidates have been invited except your candidate.
Yes, we found that out the other day kind of by mistake, but we were getting some phone calls. We were getting some phone calls from Iowa supporters of Dr. Paul, and they asked why we weren't on the schedule. And come to find out, we didn't even know about the event, so we shuffled around to try to inquire about it. And Lou Moore, our campaign chairman here, did make some phone calls, and we were told that Dr. Paul was not going to be invited. He wasn't invited. He wasn't going to be able to participate, and we were simply shut down. So that was bad news for us. I'm
not sure why, because is he persona non grata in the Republican Party here in Iowa?
Well, I wouldn't think so. I mean, my goodness, Dr. Paul's been to Iowa once and had a great response. He was on your show, I noticed, a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we're putting together a very competitive organization now for Dr. Paul to compete in the upcoming straw poll. And it's kind of funny that the very day yesterday that we learned about being excluded on this forum, I got a call from ABC News to confirm Dr. Paul's appearance in their nationally broadcast debate that's coming up out of Des Moines on August the 5th. So ABC News is continuing to include Dr. Paul. I don't see why these other organizations
Has he been excluded from any debate at any level anywhere else in the country?
No, not that we know of. I mean,
and this is not a debate, by the way, is it? Or is it just a conversation? Or
no, my understanding of the format is that it's kind of an ongoing program throughout the day where candidates come in and speak to the organization. So it's not a debate in that sense at all, but it is a platform, a so-called forum as they're billing it. There in Des Moines. So we're a little bit perplexed as to why he was excluded. But the most interesting thing is when Lou Moore did talk with the folks there, that I guess the kind of the defensiveness or the hostility in terms of our inquiry.
Why?
I don't know. We tried to find out.
Who did you talk to?
We talked to Mr. Failor, who is Ed Failor, who is an officer of the Iowans for Tax Relief. We haven't heard back from Steve Scheffler, who's the president of the Iowa Christian Alliance. We haven't heard back from him. So the only contact we've had by phone is with Mr. Failor of the Iowa for Tax Relief. But that conversation, I happened to overhear it, by the way, was very short, very blunt, not on Lou Moore's part, because he was simply trying to make an inquiry as to why Dr. Paul wasn't invited. In fact, we really did think that we misplaced or lost or overlooked the invitation, because we get so many in our office now by phone and fax to a variety of different events throughout the country And we just simply thought
Well, they have a lot of good people showing up at this forum. They've, in fact, I'm helping give as much as I can, as much publicity for the forum, because Iowans for Tax Relief, that is a respected organization,
Right.
and so is the Iowa Christian Alliance up until now. But Senator Brownback's going to be there, Duncan Hunter's going to be there, Mike Huckabee's going to be there, Mitt Romney and Tom Tancredo and Tommy Thompson. And I didn't know that they were in the business of excluding any bona fide Republican candidates.
Well, we did get word this morning that there are some organizations who were involved in the formation of this event from the very beginning stages that have been shocked as well that they did not believe that any candidates would not be invited, and so there's some things going on there which I find interesting.
Well, I know some of the people who are working for these other organizations also are committed to other campaigns.
True.
But that's typical, though.
Sure.
There'll be people who are on boards and staff directors who are working for particular candidates. That still would not give any reason to shut down the appearance of a bona fide candidate.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, this reminds me of the stunt. And I use that word specifically, the stunt that the chairman of the Michigan Republican Party pulled after the South Carolina debate when he was all upset about Dr. Paul's views on foreign policy, whether he was upset or not. I mean, it's certainly his privilege to have a different view on any issue, but when he made the claim that he was going to make a motion that Dr. Paul be excluded from the national debates because he was so angry, was just preposterous, and that gentleman heard from the rank-and-file dues-paying members of the Michigan Republican Party, and he quickly changed his tune. Again, he might have a difference of opinion on it. We certainly respect that.
Now, Ron Paul is, a lot of folks will have no idea who he is, but members of people who are likely to be inclined to attend an organization sponsored by the Iowa Christian Alliance and the Iowans for Tax Relief would know who he is. Because you're talking about political junkies here.
Yeah, I would think so, especially on those issues. I mean, because Dr. Paul is always labeled as the taxpayer's best friend by the National Taxpayers Union, which I understand that Mr. Failor is a member of that board of directors, which is kind of interesting. And
why?
Of course,
Why is that interesting?
Yeah, and Dr. Paul, of course, is known by a lot of pro-life leaders around the country as being a strident pro-life person, which he is. So you would think that that these people would want to hear from him.
Well, and even if they don't, that's not the point either. This is a candidates forum.
That's true.
And would they refuse Giuliani because he's not pro-life to show up at the Republican candidates forum? Would they refuse Senator McCain because they don't like McCain-Feingold?
Right.
Well, this doesn't make any sense. There's got to be an explanation. You guys must have misunderstood.
Well, I wish that, maybe that's the case, and if it is, that's fine. But, we're scratching our head trying to figure out as to why. As my dad says, there's the good reason, and then there's the real reason. So what is the real reason in this situation?
Well, we're going to leave the forum. We're going to leave this as a question mark. We're going to just assume that this was a mistake until I hear otherwise.
Okay.
And because I don't know these people very well, and some of them I don't know at all, but these are two organizations that have a lot of respect around the state of Iowa, which I don't think will remain quite as respectable if they exclude Ron Paul from this forum. Now, there's a number of these people on who are already agreeing to appear on the forum that are really decent men.
Right.
They've got an incredible treasure trove of political talent, even though they might not be, White House bound. They've got some decent folks who are running for office at this level, and I would put Ron Paul on that list of some pretty decent fella.
Well, I certainly agree with you, and all the other candidates, they have views, and there's some difference of opinion, which is fine, which is certainly healthy. I mean, my take on this, from my experience in Washington, is a lot of times the rank-and-file members of the organization simply don't know what some of their leaders do and what the leaders decide.
We're trying to reach Steve Scheffler. We've been
Okay.
trying to reach him when we have not been successful here in the last few minutes to try to do so. We'll try to find somebody from Iowans for tax relief too, because I think whether the folks here in Iowa deserve an explanation.
Okay.
And because I would, and if they have a good case for excluding him, and if they can make it, I'll agree with them.
Okay.
Except, you probably won't agree with them anyway because you're working with the campaign guy. Kent, hang on. I need to take a short time out here. It looks like we're going to see I think we've maybe chased down an explanation here for you.
Okay, great.
Stay put, and we'll return here in just a moment as Mickelson in the Morning proceeds. Right back to conversation. Mickelson here with you. We're on our Newsmaker line. Kent Snyder is with the Ron Paul for President campaign, and he's wondering why his candidate's been excluded from an upcoming presidential candidate forum sponsored by Iowans for Tax Relief and the Iowa Christian Alliance. Ed Failor represents the Iowans for Tax Relief. And, Ed, we'd be curious about the exclusion, sir.
Sure. Well, I'm Executive Vice President of Iowans for Tax Relief. I wasn't sure what title you gave me. I didn't want to assume one that I don't have.
Okay.
Months ago, when you start planning something of this scope, we sat down and we made a determination of, what would be in the best interest of our members. We, as 501c3s and C4s, we invited Democrats and Republicans alike. You operate on the assumption there's a potential that all could say yes. So you move forward and saying, what can we, handle in a day? And so therefore we had to draw a line of viability because we could not, every person who's claimed that they're a candidate for president, we could not include. We set a certain line of viability so we could manage the event and made our decision months ago and invited who we were going to invite, who we thought would serve our memberships within Iowa, their interest in hearing from the most credible candidates for president.
That's so if Senator McCain says, "Hey, I'd like to come tomorrow," you'd say no? Or if Senator Hillary says that she'd like to come and talk to you guys, you'd say no?
No, then you didn't understand me. I said we invited them.
Well, if they change their mind, would you say no?
If they, that's hypothetical. We would have a discussion about it, but that would still be someone we invited saying that they were interested in coming.
Do you want to continue this conversation? I can after the news if you'd want, because
if you'd like to,
I would like to, because I think that is a pretty lame explanation, to be honest with you. Back after the news, a little bit of political wrinkle has happened here in the state that's already made national news, and as a matter of fact, up on the internet, LouRockwell.com is already publishing a story about the exclusion of Ron Paul from one of the Iowa forums, the presidential forums, and this is turning a spotlight towards a couple of different organizations here in Iowa, Iowans for Tax Relief and the Iowa Christian Alliance, which I thought just out of neglect or oversight had forgotten to include Ron Paul, who's one of his campaign organizers, is on our Newsmaker line. His name is Kent Snyder. And Ed Failor is from the Iowans for Tax Relief. He's on our Newsmaker line as well. The question I would have for you, Ed Failor, is if your organization's mission is tax relief, I would think the first person you would have invited would have been Congressman Ron Paul with his record of voting against taxes.
Actually, we have an obligation as a 501c3 to be educational in nature, and if we were actually to slant any of our invitations based on a political agenda, we might be in violation of IRS law. Potentially, just to have that discussion, which I hadn't considered until you just said that question. Actually, that's nonsensical by itself. What's interesting here is we have a forum that we've chosen to hold. We're two private organizations who have the same rights as, the gentleman who's representing Mr. Paul's campaign to do those things that we deem in the best interest. Take, for example, Hy-Vee. This isn't suppression of the free market. Hy-Vee doesn't offer every soda pop that's available in the world on their shelves, and they don't have to, and that's not denying the free market. Every person who happens to say they're a candidate for president, who in a recent Mason-Dixon poll has something less than 1%, so we might not have been so stupid a few months ago when we decided to draw some line of credibility, and has, we don't have to offer that forum to everyone either. I mean,
of course you don't.
Drew a line.
I fully approve of that. But now that the events have changed and circumstances have changed somewhat,
Other than a bunch of people from out of state calling my home and our offices, nothing's changed in my view of the world. I mean, of the number of calls they've published is fine. If this is what they'd like to do, they have the right to do it. They've published on the internet my home phone number. I'm not even at home, and they're calling and saying
I don't approve of that.
They're saying horrible things to my wife and children and calling all night, which is okay too, because you know what? The Constitution guarantees them the right to do that.
I don't approve of that, and I'm not defending that, Ed.
No, I know you're not, but let me finish. Here's my bigger point. The only part of that matters to me is that only one call of the 40-plus calls that we received were from an Iowa phone number, and that one didn't actually leave a message, so it might not even have been about this issue. So it seems to me we're representing the desires of our Iowa members pretty well. Of the few hundred calls we've gotten at our offices, and when I left the office yesterday afternoon, 3 had been from Iowans, 2 of which weren't our members. So it seems to me we're doing a pretty good job of reflecting the views of our membership and reflecting who our members would also consider credible candidates. So I think we're probably a more accurate reflection of what really the political process looks like then, including everyone who just happens to say they're running for president.
What's the purpose of a presidential candidates forum?
The purpose of this is neither of us are politically aligned, neither of us are partisan, so we don't have any obligation to the Republican Party, we don't have any obligation to the Democrat Party or the Socialist Party or whoever.
What are you trying to achieve?
We are trying to present to our members a credible group of candidates who will express their views on taxes and pro-family, pro-Iowa Christian Alliance issues and answer a series of questions that they're going to be asked.
Yeah. And can you think of a reason at this late date to exclude Congressman Ron Paul?
Well, because that decision was made months ago, as I said, the invitation.
I know the decision. I know that, and you have the right to invite, as you say.
The event's planned. I mean, the schedule's planned. We are paying X dollars to have this event at Hy-Vee Hall. We have it for X amount of time.
If for instance, Congressman Ron Paul were to bring his own name tag and own chair, would that promise to do that? Could that possibly influence your decision?
I'm not understanding what you just said.
Well, I mean, if this is if you're planning, I mean, I know that plans are made and they're important to have plans and all that kind of stuff. But if events change and you've planned something in the past,
changed in my view.
Okay.
Nothing changed in our view.
So as far as Iowans for Tax Relief and Iowa Christian Alliance is concerned, you folks have determined that Congressman Ron Paul doesn't merit the consideration of Iowans at this presidential forum, and nothing that anybody could say can change your mind.
I think what you said is loosely accurate. I think Congressman Ron Paul has the right to run for president, merits whatever objective look people want to take at this. But, I mean, the proof of the fringe nature of this candidate, I mean, for the first time in the history of our organization, people are actively trying to hack into our server and shut down our website, for example. We're getting, people at our homes, calls at midnight about this. So, I mean, if that's the kind of people that are engaged with this campaign, we sure made the right call when we decided who to invite.
Well, Kent, you're listening in on this. You represent Congressman Ron Paul, and he says you guys are a bunch of knuckle draggers.
I didn't say that either. Let's be clear. You called me lame, Jan, and now said
no,
I
didn't say. I didn't say.
Earlier, you said my argument was lame.
I said your argument was lame.
Yeah,
I don't.
fine.
I still think it is.
Said, and I want to be abundantly clear because there is no debate that Congressman Paul has a wonderful record. I don't debate that. I'm just saying we made a line of demarcation. There's a recent Mason-Dixon poll that would probably support that we were pretty accurate, and the behavior of the fringe-type people who seem to be his supporters who are willing to call people's homes and say horrid things to their children and spouses, and none of them being from Iowa almost. Wow.
Are we going to?
Probably right.
Well, what about the margin of error for some of the other candidates? I mean, how does Duncan Hunter and Tommy Thompson, for instance?
Right, it's a line we decided months ago when we extended the invitations.
Okay.
I mean, that's where we were, and I think history has proven us out to be accurate.
Okay.
And I think the behavior of people with fringe type of behavior, as the supporters of the congressman, the congressman, if nothing else, should abhor the kind of behavior that's going on by his supporters.
Okay. All right, Kent, go ahead.
Support it.
Kent?
Well, I mean, I just think this gentleman is talking in circles. I mean, if you take a look at it, there are 10 Republican candidates who have participated in every major national debate, MSNBC at the Reagan Library, Fox News in South Carolina, CNN in New Hampshire. All 10 candidates participated. And this gentleman is saying that Ron Paul is not a credible candidate. It's nonsense. You take a look at Tom Tancredo. Tom Tancredo, if this gentleman is saying that they decided to include Tom Tancredo months ago, Tom Tancredo was an exploratory committee. He wasn't even an announced candidate. You take a look at the list, Brownback, Gilmore, Huckabee, Romney, Tancredo, Thompson, all of them, and Hunter, all of them are included. Did he invite McCain? Did they invite Giuliani? I assume they did. And Ron Paul was the only one. I think your question is why is Ron Paul excluded? Certainly they have a right to exclude or include anyone they want to. That's not the issue. The issue is asking them to explain to Iowans, to explain to the rank-and-file members, to explain to us why they excluded Dr. Paul. I mean, it's interesting to me, again, every major debate, ABC News confirmed yesterday with me that they wanted to make sure Dr. Paul was a part of the next debate in Des Moines on August the 5th. Ron Paul tops the charts every single time on online polls after every single one of these major debates. The interest that we have from Iowans in terms of money that's coming into our campaign, in terms of volunteers, in terms of the interest that our new Iowa coordinator has now put together for the Iowa straw poll, is practically overwhelming, and that's not an exaggeration. So, again, this gentleman is talking in circles. To me, the facts are clear. They have some reason outside of what he's giving us as to why he's excluding Dr. Paul, and I suggest that the rank-and-file members of his organization ask him about that and other Iowans.
Well, I would just suggest to you, and just very simply, the Congressman Paul was not invited. John Cox was not invited. Dr. Klein was not invited from the Republican side. Former Alaska Senator Mike Gravel, who says he is running for president, who actually supports the fair tax concept, was not invited. It's not singularly Congressman Paul, so saying that I'm talking in circles is bordering on as irrational as the behavior that I'm getting at my home. So so it's kind of comical.
But Ed, I don't know anybody, and I can't speak for you, but anybody who would use the phone or the internet to harass anybody in the political sphere because you're peeked at them or just because you can, that's about as low as it gets.
They encourage you to go look at that Congressman Paul's website where they encourage the behavior.
Yeah, well, let me be clear about that. If you go to our website and you read the
do you denounce the behavior that's happening or not?
And yes, I do. And you look at what we wrote, and the only thing we wrote, which I wrote as chairman of this campaign, is that we gave your office telephone number, which is on your website. We gave no information other than that. And I simply suggested to people that we couldn't find out the answers from you as to why you think you excluded Dr. Paul. And we encourage people to contact your office to find out the answers.
And one of us has told the truth throughout this, and you have not. Because whoever called me, and whether it was you yesterday or whoever else it was yesterday, and you printed a lie on your website when you said that I would not give an answer. That is not true.
No, you didn't explain. You didn't explain why.
I gave you the exact answer I just gave just now, that we set a line of who we were going to invite based on credibility, and that's where we made the decision. I said those exact words to you on the phone.
Right. I overheard the conversation, and Lou Moore, our campaign manager, asked you why you weren't including Dr. Paul. You said he wasn't credible. He then asked you, how can you determine that credibility question?
But you said I gave no answer at all, which isn't accurate, sir. If you read what you wrote, it is horribly inaccurate. It says inaccurate and inappropriate and lacks scruples as the people who are your supporters who are calling my home.
Ed, I'm a third-party observer here. I like Ron Paul a lot.
I do too.
I like several of these candidates a lot here, and I'm just thinking, though, that this is an unnecessary controversy, and this has been made personal, and that's a total waste of everybody's time. The principles of your organization and the principles of the Iowa Christian Alliance are both extraordinarily compatible with the philosophy and stated positions of Ron Paul. If I were running your organization, I would say, yeah, you weren't included earlier. You were a later declared candidate. We know that makes it difficult for us, but hey, this is not a big deal. Y'all come and let's have a big party out of this. This doesn't require a great deal of planning. This is not a wrinkle. If your organization and the Iowans for a Christian Alliance can't accommodate the simple change in schedule and accommodation of one extra candidate, I'm wondering, how can you deal with the real world?
I think you have an amazing ability to be very negative. I appreciate it.
This is not negative. This is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer.
You're right. It's an absolute no-brainer because when and I can be biblical on this, make your yes, and your no, your no. If we start now making our no our yes, then we lose organizational focus on being able to be consistent.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Can I finish and tell you why it's not? What happens if Dr. Mark Klein calls and now he wants to be in because he said he's running for president? What happens if John Cox, who we decided not to include in that first line of people who are invited, says, which he did call yesterday, except they've made no stink about it. They've just accepted the answer. But John Cox himself called me, was an incredible gentleman. The gentleman from the Ron Paul's campaign was yelling at me.
No, he wasn't.
To be honest.
He was not.
Anyway, the truth of the matter is it's true, but when people who know me will know I don't lie. So
they just learned something new.
And when Mr. Cox called me, he was a complete and total gentleman. Didn't like the answer I gave him. That was abundantly clear. But he said it in a gentlemanly way and respected where we were headed with.
See, Ed, your organizational purity is legendary. The only point is, you have the goal of your organization is tax relief. And Ron Paul is the number one tax reliever who votes consistently with your record, and you ought to be giving him a purple robe and a limo.
And just keep in mind that Dr. Paul just spoke at the National Taxpayers Union NTU's dinner in Washington D.C. and is always rated tops by the NTU. By the National Taxpayers Union.
This is a totally unsolicited.
I agree completely. I'm on the board of directors of the National Taxpayers Union. I agree.
This is totally unsolicited advice on my part, Ed. Just relax. Invite the guy. Make everybody's day.
I appreciate your input, but that isn't going to happen. So we can.
Let me ask you.
I've got a break here, Kent. And thank you, Ed Failor. Thank you for calling. I'm running way into the high. This is just an unusual moment, and I'm having trouble processing. And I'm sorry, it's my deficiency. Back in a sec.
WHO.
Hi, everybody. We are just about out of time here. I'm just having trouble processing all of this information. I always thought the idea of organizations that have stated purposes and goals is to attract new customers. Wouldn't bringing a whole new group of people into the fold that you can meet and bill and exploit, fellowship with? Yeah, that's it. Shouldn't that be the goal of organizations? And if you have an organization whose purpose is to relieve the taxpayers of needless taxes, wouldn't the guy with the most legendary anti-tax constitutional voting record in the history of recent Congress be on the top of your invite list, even if he's a recent add-on? I mean, how difficult is it to change a plan when there is no cost, no hassle? All you have to do is wiggle your little finger again. Maybe Iowans just don't know how to change it. I've heard that before.